Thank you, Brother Davis, and good morning to each of you on a lovely Sunday morning. Well, if you were from Great Lakes, the singing group would not be the Weatheralds and the Emerys. That's the Emeralds. And so we're blessed here today in multiple ways. And I want to say thank you for the honor to come and just share worship with you and be together. We're just a blessed people to be able to be together. We somehow, it's becoming more precious to us, I'm sure. And it seems to me that these days we're spending spiritual capital at an incredible rate of speed. Spiritual energy is being used up in some of the challenges that are around us and the confusion, at least the confusion in Michigan. And so I pray that this morning our Father will just hold us and hug us and nurture us together, because I'm sure that's what he wants to do in our midst today. In just a moment, I'm going to take you to the book of Isaiah. I've been spending quite a few days now in my devotions in Isaiah. I worked through it, read through it, came back, started over again. I'm at chapter 66 for today again, the last of it, probably going to start through again. And obviously today is not going to be a review of the entire book of Isaiah, but the incredible God who comes to his people and offers himself in the midst of warning. It's a beautiful, beautiful picture. I'm reminded of a story I read. I read it a long time ago. It's a Persian king, a good king who is benevolent, cared for his people, concerned about their welfare. And so every once in a while, he would dress in workman's clothes and beggar's clothes sometimes and just mingle with the people that he ruled over. And in the course of time, he slipped into a cellar where a gentleman was stoking a furnace fire, and came to know the old gentleman that worked there down in the dark of this cellar, and would visit him periodically, eat the same coarse food that the gentleman ate, and just sit and became his friend. After some time of making those kind of visits, the Persian king said to the poor gentleman, probably stooped and bent down there, he said, actually, I am your king. And the king thought, really, this poor man is going to likely ask me for some gift that gets him out of this cellar. But the man said, no, to others you have given rich gifts. But to me, you gave your friendship, your time, and it wasn't a gift that he needed beyond that. I'm reading this morning from Isaiah chapter 57 and verse number 15. This verse will be the springboard for this morning. Beautiful verse, so much theology wrapped up here, and yet such simple nurture is here as well. Isaiah 57 and 15. For thus says the high and exalted one, who lives forever, whose name is holy. I dwell on a high and holy place, and also with the contrite and lowly of spirit, in order to revive the spirit of the lowly, and to revive the heart of the contrite. Father, for these moments, bless your word until it becomes alive in our hearts today. In Jesus' name, amen. There are believers among us who struggle to and I say believers on purpose. There are believers among us who struggle to really believe that God would speak to them. And you may not be able to grasp that, but there are, I'm aware of some who, particularly when thinking of one who, you would not be able to put your finger on his life, but to really believe that God would speak to him, he still struggles. Mr. France, in his book, The Living God, talks about those who feel like it would be almost blasphemous to think of the great God coming down and nurturing and ministering to us. He said, on the other hand, there are some who take it as a matter of right. So for one person on one side, God is too remote, too holy to be in contact with his own creatures. And on the other side, some consider him just, like buddy, so he's almost too matey. And Mr. France says, both are right, both are wrong. So this morning, and I am not here, I understand you're blessed with teaching, and I'm not here to tell you something you don't already know. But I just want to share this great God who says, I dwell in a high and holy place. We would say he's transcendent. It's not a Bible word, not a word that is actually found in the Bible. It simply means that this one who is holy, so absolutely separate, is so beyond our time and space and matter that if we drew a line and everything that was created was on this side, God would be somewhere way out beyond, absolutely other than all that we know in this universe. And in that place, high and lofty, exalted above everything else, really, he's in a place that I could never reach. I could never get there. There's no way I could pass out of or get beyond this world of time and space and matter to get to where he is, unreachable. And if somehow I could get there, I would never be able to approach him if I ever got there. In dazzling light, robed in light, in absolute holiness, how would a mere piece of sinful dust ever get to approach him? Transcendent, beyond it all. He dwells on a high and holy place. And yet, the beauty of this is that he does not run his world by remote from wherever that high and lofty place is. He could. He's absolutely capable of something like that, of just running his world. You're familiar with a remote these days. You change your thermostat at home and you're nowhere even close. And God could have run his world by remote. Actually, he holds the world together by the word of his power. He holds atoms together just by his spoken word. So he certainly is capable of running the world from a high and lofty place. And yet, this God who realized I could not come to him, the gulf was so great that I could not reach him, till I cried, "Dear Lord, I cannot come to where you are." You're familiar with the song. So he came to me when I could not come to where he was. He came to me. The story of Good Friday, the story of Christmas, all of that is the beauty of a God who is not just transcendent, but one who actually comes close, comes inside his created world, becomes immanent, comes within, Emmanuel, who has come to us. But grace, the grace of a God who is immanent, who comes within, comes close, is not just a New Testament story for all through the Old Testament. I think we have totally missed the beauty and the immanence of God in the Old Testament as he walked with Enoch, walked with Adam and Eve, and created a graceful support for those who reached to him and honored him. There is a closeness that some of us have totally missed in the Old Testament. We thought it was all judgment and fire and wind, but it's a God who the prophets drip with mercy and grace and calm. So grace is not merely the prerogative of the New Testament, but it is the God who comes to us, the transcendent God who slips in close. Now, if you and I were somehow able to grasp those two concepts, they are so mutually exclusive, really, that they're so incredibly powerful. They would be like almost like explosive, to pull them together. They're so powerful, and really, I've thought about this. Really, there is no way to overdo the transcendence of God. There is no way to overdo it. I think we'll be all of eternity learning the absolute glory of God, and never, it's infinite. We will never learn it all. But at the same time, I don't think you can overdo overdo. That would work. The simple beauty of God who has loved us enough to be self-giving and come to us, come close. Our problem really is not with exaggerating either one. Our problem is learning where to pull them together without getting so imbalanced that we're either all on one side or all on the other side. We're the very best of us struggle with balance. We do. You think you're the one that's all straight and level and balanced, but you're as imbalanced as the rest of us. And, life takes us. So I had an executive committee meeting yesterday morning working on summer plans. Talk about from over here to over here. And so this chairman is supposed to be somewhere in the middle, trying to pull it together. And like, hello? How do you find balance some of these days, in all of this? Well, if you and I, if our whole focus becomes so intensely laid on the transcendence of God that he's remote, and pretty soon he'll be harsh and unreachable even in our gospel world, pretty soon our whole relationship with him will be stunted and stymied, and we'll take on some of the tone that we have applied to God, our minds have applied to God. So we've got him so far out there that he's remote and detached and then harsh. And if that's all we see, pretty soon we'll be harsh and conniving and critical and caustic. And the very ones we want to get to heaven will be the ones we push away. If, on the other hand, he becomes like Mr. France said, just so matey, so buddy, pretty soon we will lose the reverence, the fear of God, the balance of conviction, and it will be all about, just relationship, feelings, sentimental things, until we really have nothing left to offer another generation, because we have become unbalanced on that side. One of the old Free Methodist bishops, Bishop Marston, said, wherever there's an over-attention or undue balance so that we are all focused on one truth or another truth, and focusing on that truth negates the others that ought to be brought into the picture. Wherever that happens, faith becomes eccentric, and it's in the danger of collapse. And it is. It's in danger of collapse. So this morning, we need to bring this down so it's not just a theology lesson, but it comes down to where we live. And I pray the Lord will help me. I'm coming to the book of Isaiah again, chapter 40. These are familiar chapters. When you get in the middle, I remember it's been years and years ago, Dr. Yoakum came to an Ontario camp meeting and preached through Isaiah chapter 40 one morning. It was a beautiful morning, and it marked my life. I think back and realize that day began to shape some of my grasp of God, and I shouldn't say began, but was shaping my grasp of God. So chapter 40, verse 18, to whom then will you liken God? Or what likeness will you compare with him? So this is Isaiah speaking to the God who is other, transcendent. So he's so out there that there's nobody else that you can say he's like, okay? To whom then will you liken God, or what likeness will you compare with him? As for the idol, a craftsman casts it, a goldsmith plates it with gold, and a silversmith fashions chains of silver. Who is too impoverished for such an offering selects a tree that does not rot. He seeks out for himself a skillful craftsman to prepare an idol that will not totter. Do you not know? Have you not heard? Has it not been declared to you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundation of the earth? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in. It is he who reduces rulers to nothing, who makes the judges of the earth meaningless. Scarcely have they been planted. Listen to this. Scarcely have they been sown. Scarcely has their stalk taken root in the earth. But he merely blows on them, and they wither. And the storm carries them away like stubble. And God chimes in. To whom then will you liken me, that I would be his equal, says the Holy One. Isaiah goes on. Lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these stars, the one who leads forth their hosts by number. And so as we work through this, the prophet is simply giving us some of the attributes, the greatness of the transcendent one. He sits above it all. He's the creator. And Isaiah uses the word many times to just underline who God is in contrast to idols. He knows, look at what he knows. He's the one who leads forth their hosts by number, all these stars. He calls them all by name. Man, I can't even keep my own kids' names straight. Darren, no, I don't mean Derek, whatever your name is, you understand? But God calls all these stars by name because of the greatness of his might and the strength of his power. Not one of them is missing. When he calls roll, he never misses one of them. Thank God. He's far beyond losing where one of them is hidden in some galaxy. He knows where they are. He knows them by name. And when he calls roll, he doesn't have to use a book. He just calls roll out of his head. Wow. Why do you say, O Jacob, and assert, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and the justice due me escapes the notice of my God? Do you not know? Have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, does not become weary or tired. So that's the transcendent God, okay? Now we're about to make a little shift. The God who is way out there is on his way our direction. So listen, his understanding is inscrutable. So he is the God who knows, Kyle and Delich would say, God has pure understanding. I like that. This God who's way out there has pure understanding, and he has infallible criteria for determining the right point at which to come and interpose aid in my behalf. Okay, pure understanding. So the God who's out there has this pure understanding, has infallible criteria for determining when I need help and you need help. And now the picture shifts, because the God who seems remote, if you've only read some of these verses, sitting on the circle of the earth, people are grasshoppers, he does have inscrutable, unsearchable understanding, and he knows the perfect time to slip from where he is to where you are. Now, that's not to say that he's not always where you are, but just for our help to get a word picture, sometimes we need to see God on the move, okay? So please don't misunderstand me. God is always where you are. But there are times when we just need him on purpose to come and show up. We do. So the picture is shifting, and in the context of his transcendent power, his transcendent knowledge, his transcendent creatorship, his transcendent intelligence, he stoops now. This one who never gets weary stoops to one who's fainting, and bends to someone who's weary. In fact, he reaches from his high and lofty place to the heart that is crushed. So the scripture lesson we began with said, God says, I dwell in a high and lofty place, and also with the lowly, the humble, and the contrite in spirit. So the word here, the word contrite in that particular verse, Isaiah 57:15, comes from a word that means to be crushed, to be pulverized into powder. And out of that is a broken spirit, a broken heart. And God, this God who never gets weary, in the context of his transcendent power, is also the God who gives strength to the weary, who stoops to the weary, and to him who lacks might, he increases strength, and he doesn't do it by remote. Doesn't do it by remote. Though youths grow weary and tired, and vigorous young men stumble badly, yet those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not become weary. The transcendent God who dwells in a high and lofty place has come to dwell with the humble and crushed, and has come to dwell with them. The scripture himself, God himself said, in order to revive the heart of the one who is crushed. Mr. Piper said, it is surprising that the lofty one whose name is holy dwells with crushed and humble saints. It is not compromising when the lofty one whose name is holy dwells with crushed and humble saints, but it is healing when the lofty one whose name is holy dwells with crushed and humble saints. This morning, as we have slipped into this sanctuary together, we've all brought in a little baggage from something and somewhere. Some of it's emotional baggage, some of it's troubled stuff. Some of it's questions about the future. Just incredible insecurity or uncertainty, really. It's marking all of us these days. And so every once in a while, this sermon is being preached to myself. But the God who has slipped in beside let's just join pictures, the Persian king that slipped down to that cellar, remember? Now the God who has slipped into your cellar, your dark place, is a God who sits down in his transcendent power, his pure understanding, his infallible criteria of when to actually come and expose his hand in your life. And he says, I'm here. I'm here. A lot of years ago, our first child made the wild dash to the hospital when Benny was about to be born. So I'm this daddy that's green, and I'm not too comfortable with this whole story, let me tell you. And I'm not comfortable with this hospital story, let alone a birth story. So the doctor takes me into some room, someplace, and he scrubs, so I scrub. Well, that's enough, but he scrubs again, so I scrub again. And he's not finished, so he scrubs again, and well, I don't know, don't know anything to do but scrub again with him, you know. So here we are scrubbing away, and in we go, and little Benny is born, but he's way premature and way too little. And so they whisk him off to a city hospital, to a neonatal unit, and then they come and tell me that I need to head there myself. Well, it's night. You know, it's dark. I know that town, the city, a little bit, not very much, a wee bit, because it passed the southern part of it, and that's about all. But now I'm supposed to find my way around and get to this big hospital and find my baby. And it's dark. And I'm not scared of the dark, but boy, the darkness seems to intensify all the crazy stuff, you know, the crazy emotions in your head and fears and all of that. So I'm trying to figure my way out, leave Sandy here, and slip into the big city. And my dad showed up. If I knew he was coming, I'd forgotten it by now. I've forgotten that part, but I don't think I knew he was coming. He just simply showed up and rode with me to the hospital. He didn't do anything about the whole deal. All he was there for was he was there with me. The picture for us is very different. God didn't just show up and say, I'm here because he was just going to sit there with us. He becomes actively involved. But God does say to us this morning, I'm here. I'm here. And somehow when someone like that speaks to us and says, I'm here, our shoulders can quit coming up around our ears. And we can rest in the fact that someone who knows what's going on has actually come. But the beautiful part of this is as I've been working through these chapters in Isaiah, God actually confronts the idols and those who worship idols and calls them to a court session. And in the court session, if you please, in this court scenario, God says, essentially, okay, I'm going to present my credentials here in this session, and idols, you have to match this or you're worthless. You're useless. No, I've added words to that. And essentially, God calls them to understand that his credential is the credential of foreknowledge, of prophecy. And he says to the idols, essentially, you can't even tell what happened in the past, let alone say what's going to happen in the future. But I know the past, and I'm going to tell you what the future is. Because I'm calling someone from the north, someone from the east, and he's going to come, and he's going to deliver Judah. He's going to be Judah's deliverer. Judah hasn't even been taken to captivity yet. And the man who is going to be the deliverer hasn't even been born yet. And God gives at least 10 things about that deliverer and what will happen. His name will be Cyrus. He will be God's anointed shepherd, the one that is given this call to let Judah return from Babylon, come home. And again, they're not even in Babylon yet. So here's 150 years ahead of time or so. Isaiah says that on God's behalf. So Cyrus I'll take his hand and he'll subdue nations. And he did. The Midianite nation, the Lydian nation of Turkey, and then down to the horseshoe of Babylon and on to India. And I will loose loins of kings. You remember the story of Belshazzar? While Cyrus's army is coming under the walls of the city, the Euphrates River ran under the walls and through the city. And the water, they diverted the course of the river, and they come in. And while Cyrus's army is doing that, Belshazzar sees writing on the wall, his loins are loosed in fear. And Daniel says, tonight you're weighed in the balances. And that night Belshazzar dies. The gates will be opened. These aren't the entry gates to the city of Babylon. These are gates that allow someone to come up from the river below and into the city. God says, I will give great treasures, the treasures of darkness. Well, just Babylon's treasures with the hanging gardens and all would be incredible wealth. And he calls him a bird of prey. And Cyrus's symbol or emblem was an eagle. He said he will let my people go, not as fugitives. They won't sneak back, but they will go as free men back to their homeland after their captivity. They will take back the vessels that were stolen from the temple. And Ezra tells us of the 5,400 gold and silver vessels that are taken back. And he will order that the city of Jerusalem and the temple be rebuilt. So God is saying, before Cyrus is ever born, I've got a plan. And my credential is foreknowledge, prophecy. So idols, you are absolutely worthless. You don't know the past. You don't know the future. And I can tell about Judah's delivery before they've even been taken into captivity. So this is the God, the transcendent God, who has just slipped down into our cellar. And he doesn't just say, I'm here. But the God who announces that he has plans. And when he makes plans and says something that's going to happen, it happens. And he says to us this morning, I'm here. And I have this one. I'm here, and I have this one. I think in ways that we have never been able to really grasp, that every test, I think this, I could be proven wrong for sure. But I'm thinking that every test that the enemy brings to us, tests of patience, tests of faith, tests of waiting, tests of endurance, tests of love, every test, the bottom line of that test is whether or not God is actually trustworthy or not. And this morning, the transcendent God, who also lives with the humble and crushed spirit, simply slips up and says to us today, I'm here. And I have this one. So you really don't have to figure it all out. Boy, there's a lot of things I want to figure out. And probably the more I figure them out, the more messed up they get. But God says, I have this one, and I'm trustworthy. Thank God. Pastor, would you close the service for us? You know your people, and let's just understand that God is here to say, I've got this one.
And the ladies are coming. Would you stand with me? We've received a word from the Lord. Let us respond. If you'd bow your heads with me.